A question facing many modern-day Christians is how can we impact the world for Christ through film? Naturally, much of this burden rests on the Christian film director. And there certainly are multiple film directors that are Christians out there who are trying to make an impact on the world. But somewhere along the way, something's gone wrong. Because so many of these films simply aren't making that big of an impact on non-Christians. Clearly, there's a problem here. And I think the solution to impacting the secular world with a Christian message through films can be solved through two ways. First, we need to recognize the issue with Christian films today. Why are Christian film directors unable to reach a larger audience? Then once we've sorted that out, we'll try and look at how we can provide the Christian worldview in movies while still making it pleasing to a non-Christian audience. So what is the problem with most Christian films today? Well, it's important to remember that there are two important parts of a movie. A movie ought to both teach and please. I think the Christian film industry has the teaching part down. With movies like God's Not Dead and God's Not Dead 2, they're completely focused on trying to tell a message to the world. The problem is that they're kind of failing in the pleasing part, especially to non-Christians. I mean, movies like that are very antagonistic towards anyone who's not a believer. They kind of lump all atheists together as a super mean professor. This quickly opens up movies like this to pure and utter mocking and bashing by groups like Saturday Night Live. And it also leaves them open to critics just smashing the preaching. Because that's really what these movies feel like. They just feel like they're preaching at you without giving that other side of really pleasing you and drawing you into the story and making you enjoy it and want to find out what happens to the characters. Yeah, I can tell you a message. What's the point of telling you a message if you're not enjoying it along the way? No one's going to want to sit through these movies for that long just to be preached at. It's not why people go to see movies. Sure, they want to be taught, they want to learn, but they also want to be pleased. You can't just choose one or the other, and that's ultimately the problem with Christian movies today. Not every movie that you make has to have the whole Christian story, a whole theology in it. You know, just choose one thing or the other. You can't just overwhelm your audience with an information dump about the entire Christian worldview. It'll just be too much. You can't take that much. Now, I do understand that most of these movies do seem to be primarily for Christians. But at the same time, they're trying to advocate that we can somehow reach a larger audience with these movies. And it's simply not happening. Besides, if your target audience is just Christians, well, that's fine for some movies, but we really need to be taking a stand and impacting a larger group of people in a larger world with the Christian message, with the gospel of Christ, the good news. Now that we've looked at the problem with Christian movies today, it's time to turn our attention to how Christian film directors can change the world through film. Well, ultimately, I think the answer to this problem lies in the Bible. In Matthew 10:16, Jesus says, "Look, I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore be as shrewd as serpents and as harmless as doves." While he was specifically speaking about persecution to come, I believe that this can also be used towards film. We have to be as shrewd as serpents when we're giving the Christian worldview. Clearly just shouting it isn't working. We need to slip it into our movies carefully and subtly. But at the same time, we need to be as harmless and as innocent as a dove. We're not trying to use psychological tricks to convince people into believing the Christian worldview. Neither should we be telling them harmful things, because we're spreading the good news. We need to be cunning, we need to be shrewd about how we do it, but not to the point where we harm people or try to trick them into believing the gospel. So how do we incorporate the Christian worldview shrewdly? Well, there's no list of do this and do that. There's no set rules to it. For every movie, it's going to be a little different. Because we're looking at this with wisdom, not just okay, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta finish this, I gotta finish that. No. This is gonna be different and unique for each movie. That being said, I think there are a couple different ways that we can look at this, that others have incorporated their worldviews, not necessarily Christian ones, but their worldviews in movies. One way to do this is to provide a sort of parable of the Christian message or the Christian worldview. Multiple movies have done this. Two examples are X-Men 2, which provides a parable for homosexuality and homosexuals having to come out and the fight that they face against people and how they're more evolved. And another movie is District 9, which provides a parable against racism and the dangers and problems with racism. So what you can do with the Christian worldview is provide a parable, usually of like the chosen one representing Christ. And I'd say Matrix did this, and if I may be so bold, even Harry Potter provides a very good parable of the Christian worldview and message. Another way that Christian film directors can include the Christian worldview subtly is by focusing on only one aspect of the Christian worldview, or by focusing on something that can only result from such a worldview. Little Miss Sunshine did this by showing that nihilism works as a family value. They didn't try to go through all the tenets of nihilism, but showed that it could work as a family value, even though we all know that that doesn't work in the real world. Well, Christian film directors can do very much the same thing. For example, they could show that self-sacrifice is really the strong basis for a good family. Yeah, it doesn't have the whole Christian story behind it, but pretty much anyone would be willing to watch a movie like that. And it's clear that self-sacrifice only results from a Christian worldview. Remember this, no matter what kind of art form you're doing, your worldview will always seep through. Even in film, as long as you're being conscious to incorporate your worldview into it, it'll easily and naturally flow out of you. Christian film directors must remember, however, that they're not trying to coerce or trick the audience into becoming Christians. That's not how it works. You still have to be as innocent as a dove. No psychological tricks, no manipulation, just simply telling the truth through film. Christian film directors must remember this. When making films to the glory of God, they need to be both teaching and pleasing. If you are a Christian wanting to reflect the skill that God has given you, then you need to make high-quality films that everyone can enjoy. And not only that, but if Christian film directors want to impact the world for Christ, then they need to put in the Christian worldview shrewdly and wisely, not just blatantly trying to preach at everybody. Through it all, they must remember to be as innocent as doves. This isn't coercion, this isn't tricking. Christian film directors need to be innocent, and they need to be telling the truth to a broken world.